Microsoft's latest big AI investment is significantly more political and specifically geopolitical than the things they've done in the past. Welcome back to the AI Breakdown. On the surface of it, Microsoft's new $1.5 billion investment and partnership into G42 is not all that surprising. First of all, G42 is a fast-growing AI company in the United Arab Emirates. It's a region that's strategically positioning itself to be important in the AI space, and so it makes sense that Microsoft would want a foothold there. Second, in general, Microsoft is diversifying its set of partnerships in AI. It's trying to give its Azure business the greatest chance to integrate lots and lots of different AI solutions for lots and lots of different types of customers. However, when the broader context of G42 and the US tension with China when it comes to AI, the deal starts to look a lot more interesting. First of all, let's talk about what the deal includes. One aspect of it, as I mentioned, is the $1.5 billion investment to buy a minority stake in G42, and that's coming along with a board of directors seat. Microsoft's vice chair and president, Brad Smith, will be joining G42's board of directors. Second, there is clearly a cloud focus to the deal. Microsoft's announcement blog, for example, writes, "With the breadth of Microsoft Cloud and its differentiated AI capabilities, the deal significantly advances G42's strategy of delivering generative AI and next-generation infrastructure and services for a range of customers across financial services, healthcare, energy, government, and education. Foundational to the partnership is G42's trust and commitment in Microsoft's cloud platform. G42 will expand its existing commitment to deploying Microsoft Cloud offerings, demonstrating confidence in Microsoft as its preferred partner to enhance services and deliver value-added solutions to its customers. With the partnership, G42's data platform and other essential technology infrastructure will migrate to Microsoft Azure." So again, all of this so far is very run-of-the-mill, a big high-leverage deal to try to win position for the Azure business line. One of the additional capacities that is being expanded in Azure is that G42's Arabic large language model is now going to be available through Azure. Language-specific LLMs, I think, are going to be a big business. So again, all of this makes sense. One additional big aspect of the deal is that Microsoft and G42 will team up for a billion-dollar fund for AI developers to boost the region's skill set. So those are all the basics. And if you didn't know anything else, that would be that. Why then are the headlines things like the Wall Street Journal's Microsoft ups ante in AI race with China through stake in Abu Dhabi firm? Or the New York Times, Microsoft makes high-stakes play in tech Cold War with Emirati AI deal? For this, we need to go back to the end of November, when the New York Times ran an extensive story called Inside U.S. Efforts to Untangle an AI Giant's Ties to China. American spy agencies have warned about the Emirati firm G42 and its work with large Chinese companies that U.S. officials consider security threats. So the TLDR on all of this is that G42 has for some time tried to be neutral territory between the US and China when it came to AI. That was increasingly difficult, however, as they announced bigger and bigger deals. There was a $100 million deal with a Silicon Valley firm to build what they boasted would be the world's largest supercomputer, agreements with pharmaceutical giants like AstraZeneca, and then in October, a partnership with OpenAI. However, behind the scenes, American security agencies were convinced that G42 was hiding just how much it was working with China. Wrote the Times, U.S. officials feared G42 could be a conduit by which advanced American technology is siphoned to Chinese companies or the government. The intelligence reports have also warned that G42's dealings with Chinese firms could be a pipeline to get the genetic data of millions of Americans and others into the hands of the Chinese government. The CIA even produced a classified profile of Peng Zhao, the chief executive of G42, who was educated in the United States and renounced his American citizenship for an Emirati one. So there are really layers of geopolitical issues here. One is that, just in general, the Middle East is an area where the US has been trying to limit China's influence, broadly speaking. The US has put pressure on Middle Eastern allies to deny Chinese efforts to build military bases. However, over the last couple years, the fight has taken on a distinctly technological edge, including especially but not exclusively artificial intelligence. Now, when the New York Times published this piece, it had been clear that discussions around these issues had been ongoing for some amount of time, and that the discussions were not at the company level, but were between high-level US officials and their Emirati counterparts. Now, there is a ton in here that's beyond the scope of this show. If you're interested, for example, in the genetic information piece of this, definitely go check it out. But suffice it to say, this article represented the bigger issues with G42 starting to come to a head. A couple weeks after that piece, G42 started to indicate that they had gotten the picture and that they were focusing firmly on the US. We cannot work headline, for example, read, "A major Emirati AI company has picked a side in the US-China tech war." However, for some in Washington, that was a little bit too much lip service. In January, Wisconsin Republican Mike Gallagher, the chairman of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, started pushing for a federal investigation into G42's work. The House panel said that it had evidence that G42 works with blacklisted Chinese entities and that its CEO operated a network of Emirati and China-based companies to support China's military and intelligence services. In his letter to Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, Gallagher wrote, "Multiple U.S. companies that develop and sell export-controlled technology and products maintain extensive commercial relationships with G42 and its subsidiaries, to include Microsoft, Dell, and OpenAI. Without restrictions on G42, the hardware and software developed by these U.S. companies are at significant risk for diversion to G42's PRC-based affiliates, many of which support China's surveillance state and human rights abuses." With that continuing pressure, G42 started to move from statements to actions. In February, for example, the company announced that it had sold its stake in Chinese companies, including TikTok's owner ByteDance. The $10 billion technology investment arm of G42, called the 42X Fund, told the Financial Times in February that it had, quote, divested from all its investments in China. While it didn't give specifics, two other sources pointed to the ByteDance shares as one of the major parts of the sell-off and indicated that its stake in TikTok had previously been worth $100 million or more. So that is the background here. G42 is at the very center of the proxy war for the US's AI battle with China. And that brings us back to this Microsoft deal. The Wall Street Journal writes, "Relations between the US and the UAE have been strained in recent years over Abu Dhabi's growing ties to China and its technology firms. The agreement between one of America's biggest tech players and Abu Dhabi-based G42 signals a pivot toward Washington for the Gulf state." Now, interestingly, not only was this deal approved by Washington, it seems like the US government actually had a stronger hand than that. The New York Times Dealbook wrote a piece this morning called "How Washington Played AI Matchmaker," in which they argued that the White House, quote, laid the groundwork for the deal. That article shared another piece of the deal, which didn't feature prominently in Microsoft's announcement post, which was that G42 had agreed to strip out components and equipment from Chinese companies like Huawei from its systems. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo apparently played a role as a lead negotiator in talks with G42. What's more, the New York Times writes, "The investment is a collaboration between business and Washington. It arose out of dialogue between U.S. officials and tech executives last year over how to encourage business transactions that deepened American interests in important regions and technologies. By joining the G42 board, Microsoft will be able to audit G42's use of its technology." So in many ways, it feels like as G42 was trying to orient itself towards the US, it perhaps became a requirement from the Americans that they take on some sort of significant ownership stake from a US company. Given pre-existing relationships, Microsoft was a likely candidate, and then a couple months later, here we are with this deal. This may seem all kind of small to you, but we haven't really seen this type of collaboration between the Washington, D.C. establishment and the private sector in this way around not just business objectives, but geopolitical objectives for basically as long as I can remember. Sure, Washington has often had an opinion about the moves that tech companies make, but this level of engagement, actually playing a negotiating role, actually setting terms of a deal, shows just how central artificial intelligence is to U.S. strategic priorities. Really, really interesting stuff, and I'm sure not the last time we're going to see this type of DC private sector collaboration. For now, though, that is going to do it for the AI Breakdown. Until next time, peace.